Hello everyone, welcome to Anime and thank you for joining us for another One Piece video. Chapter 1066 of the One Piece manga brought us some very important information regarding Vegapunk and even Dragon, showing us a bit of the past where both characters ended up being in the same place at the same time. It also shows the events after Nico Robin fled Ohara, events that even Nico Robin didn't know happened because she was still a small child and on the run. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the expectations of One Piece chapter 1067 based on the events of our current chapter of 1066. But before we dive into the video, if you're new to the channel or even if you've watched a bunch of our videos, we'd be absolutely honored if you'd leave us a like and even subscribe. Maybe leave us a comment letting us know what you thought of the video. It really helps us out, and if you want to help out the channel in a bigger way, consider sharing this video or another one of your favorites with a friend. But without further ado, let's get into the video. So my friends, in chapter 1066, we saw the reasons why Dragon decided to create the Revolutionary Army, and the reasons why Vegapunk decided to join the world government instead of helping Dragon in his quest for revenge. As we said before in other videos, Vegapunk really is a scientist who does things really for his own interest, and this is confirmed in chapter 1066. However, we also see that he has a sense of justice, so even though Vegapunk has joined the world government, he has no particular loyalty to this organization. It really seems that Vegapunk only sought resources and fame within the world government. He never ever really intended to help them. Vegapunk simply wanted to complete his research into the lost century and the ancient kingdom. And there's one other thing you have to consider. With someone as smart as Vegapunk, he would know that if he were close to the world government and getting funded, he would be able to learn about things from the inside, so therefore when it was time to act with the revolutionaries on the outside, he could destabilize the world government from within. So for now, Vegapunk might just be content working for the world government and getting their funding, all the while looking for ways to get revenge on what the world government did against the citizens of Ohara, because the horrors of taking lives for people just researching the past is something that any scientist or research would find a big problem with. But it also seems that Vegapunk is already under threat for having his life taken for much the same reason, and maybe this research that he's been looking into. The world government has found out something about the origin of his technology, which we saw in a previous chapter was revealed to be not technology from the future, but rather ancient kingdom technology. So in this next chapter of 1067, probably gonna see CP0 arriving somewhere near or at least on Egghead Island, starting their mission to take Vegapunk's life, destroy all the punks, and recover this technology that the world government considers forbidden. As we know, the Straw Hats have been divided into three groups. Now the first group consists of Luffy, Bonnie, Jinbei, and Chopper, who are at the bottom of Egghead Island, kind of near a trash heap in the Fabrio phase part of the lab. Meanwhile, the second group is near the top of the island in kind of an egg-shaped building, which is far above Egghead itself, up in the clouds. In the second group, we have Frankie, Nico Robin, Nami, Usopp, and Sanji. And finally, the third group is also above the island, but they're on the ship protecting it. And in this group, we have Zoro, Brook, and Caribou. Although we don't necessarily know if Caribou may have just left the ship because of the last exchange we saw between him and Zoro. The first group was responsible for finding the real Vegapunk, which is quite different from what we saw in the flashback on Ohara. In the past, Vegapunk had quite a large head, and his brain was really big because of all of his knowledge and advanced thinking. But now, Vegapunk's head appears to be cut off, and in place has kind of an apple dome at the top, which means that Vegapunk probably took out slices of his brain to do something very important with it. On the poster that CP0 was looking at while setting about their plan for Egghead Island, we saw that there were 6 punks and one punk that was responsible for sending information to all the others, called the Stella. Vegapunk may have used his brain to create Stella, giving his body the ability to transmit knowledge to each of the different punks, enabling the 6 robot punks to work in the same way as Vegapunk, or rather represent different parts of his personality. The group of Vegapunks as a whole allow the Stella to be much more productive and do all the different things that he wished he could do on his own. But either way, we're probably gonna see this old apple top Vegapunk known as our Stella, and this will most likely be shared with us by Punk 01 that is talking to the other group, the one also known as Shaka. As we saw in chapter 1066, Shaka is telling the Straw Hats about past events concerning Vegapunk, Dragon, and the tragedy of Ohara, which caused the Straw Hats to acquire a certain trust in this Vegapunk. However, Shaka still doesn't fully trust the Straw Hats, so they're restricting the movements of them by locking their boots down to the floor. But this is also preventing the Straw Hats from doing anything against what Shaka wants to show them. But all the while, they're intrigued at what this Vegapunk has to say. After all the revelations about Ohara O'Hara and Dragon and Vegapunk, Shaka started moving our top-end group through a room to something that is yet to be revealed. But we may get to see in this next chapter what is in this room. Now, because Shaka has restricted the movements of the Straw Hats, this means that they may not completely trust what the Straw Hats will do once they see what's inside this room. So it's got to be something very important and probably very valuable. In this very room, we might get to see Vegapunk's brain, known as Stella Punk 00. Now, Stella is going to, of course, be the most important entity among all of the Vegapunks, whether it's the original or the other 6. Stella would be the very embodiment of all the knowledge that Vegapunk has, and if something were to happen to it, all the knowledge would be lost, as well as causing probably all the other punks to break down and have a problem in their own functioning. So if this is the next great reveal in this room, Shaka may be worried what the Straw Hats will do, because if they see a brain floating in a tank, this is going to be something that none of them could have ever imagined. But this very brain may be what CP0 had on their paper, and they are in the search for Stella. So not exactly Vegapunk. The world government may know what has happened to Vegapunk's brain and how he separated from his body after all. So they may not necessarily be after the Vegapunks, but rather capture Vegapunk's brain. Contained in Stella is every bit of knowledge about the ancient kingdom, all of the various ways that Vegapunk has researched the ancient technology, in fact, pretty much all of the research Vegapunk has done during their entire life. So ultimately, Shaka would be taking all the necessary precautions to keep Stella safe, because unlike the other punks who can move on their own and defend themselves, Stella is only a brain that really sends information to all the other punks. So she's got to stay in a still, defenseless place and not able to move freely like many of the other ones are. The Shakas and the original Vegapunk's real job is to protect Stella, so that the Vegapunk's great knowledge is never lost. Getting back to our other group and the real original Vegapunk, apparently he seems to be acting kind of normal, although he could be a little crazier than what we saw in the flashback. And we don't know if it's because of his advanced age or perhaps just what he's gone through in separating his brain from his body. This slightly more wacky personality might also be because he's actually free to be silly and not have all of the responsibility of research and fabrication that he used to have, making him act in a more instinctive way, but still having the ability to reason and have conversations. And because he recognized Luffy and Bonnie, it shows that he still has his memories from his life, but maybe isn't just burdened by all of the other thinking and production, because that's taken care of by the other Vegapunks. In fact, speaking of Luffy, when Vegapunk saw him for the first time, he said he'd been waiting for him, because Vegapunk knew that at some point Luffy would end up running into him. So now that they've met, Vegapunk will probably take this first group to the second group that's on the top of Egghead, and then just get everybody together so that they can reveal what is going on. With everything that Vegapunk knows about the ancient kingdom and perhaps Joy Boy, he may have a lot to tell Luffy about his devil fruit and also the other goals that Joy Boy left to him. Not only that, he also has to explain the relationship he has with Dragon and any plans that they're working towards for in the future, and his connection to the archaeologists on O'Hara. And the revelations probably wouldn't even stop there, because he'd have to first explain how he had heard of the ancient kingdom in the first places, because he obviously possesses technology from that location. So what we have to ask ourselves is, has Vegapunk actually been to Laugh Tale before? Because we haven't seen the location, but it's never been mentioned that somebody else, perhaps our Dr. Vegapunk, that has actually been there to study the technology and bring back what he could so he can learn more. In this next chapter, we also hope to learn what exactly happened to Kuma and the reasons why Vegapunk may have modified Kuma in the first place. Now, in chapter 1066, while Shaka was going through their explanations, Frankie questioned Vegapunk's motives for modifying Kuma's body and why Kuma had even helped the Straw Hats, because he was, after all, the one who had protected the Sunny over the 2-year time skip. And not just that, we also have to remember it was Kuma that separated the Straw Hats in the first place, sending each member of the crew to a different place around the world. And not just any place, but a place where each of them would be able to hone their skills and become a much greater asset to the crew after their 2 years apart. But even as Frankie asked Shaka, Shaka appeared to ignore the question. And it may be that this is just not the right time to talk about it, because Frankie is not necessarily the only person who needs to hear the answer, but rather Bonnie, who is with the real Vegapunk, may want to come together with the whole group so everything can be revealed, and somebody as logical as Vegapunk probably wouldn't want on and repeat themselves. The thing to think about Bonnie is that she went to Egghead not just because of happenstance, but she went there specifically because she wanted to find out about what had happened to her father Kuma. And Vegapunk also revealed that he had known Bonnie when she was a little girl. This familiarity might mean that Vegapunk and Kuma may have had actually a certain kind of friendship, since Bonnie was a very little girl, which allowed Vegapunk to meet her before, although she may not remember because she might have just been too little at the time. But now that Bonnie has found Vegapunk, she is now visibly and completely furious, because she, after all, went to Egghead to find out why Vegapunk modified her father's body, and what he can do to reverse it. So in this next chapter, Bonnie is going to jump on the opportunity to question Vegapunk about all he did and get him to reveal the truth. So what we're hoping is that there may be a flashback of Vegapunk and Kuma, and we may even get a revelation about Kuma's past and what special race he actually belongs to. And the most important thing is why Kuma allowed Vegapunk to modify his body in the first place. Not only just turning him into a cyborg, but a robot entirely, taking away all his emotions and memories. Another exciting revelation that came in chapter 1066 was the connection between the island of Ohara and Elbaf, and the fact that all of the knowledge that the archaeologists had uncovered in Ohara is now in Elbaf and is safe for Robin to go research. Now, many in the community had been speculating for quite a while that we were going to be going to Elbaf. And not only that, but we've expected since the Little Garden arc, because Usopp has such a deep connection with the rest of the giants. Now that we know that there's this deeper connection, and that Jaguar D. Saul, Robin's very first friend and savior really, is not only still alive, but in hiding with all of the knowledge, and the will of Ohara, as was called in the last chapter's title, is still alive and well. Another great thing about us going to Elbaf is that not only do we possibly get the Usopp growth arc that we've all been kind of waiting for, but we're also going to get a deeper arc for Robin. Now, speaking of all of the different Straw Hats, these are two characters that we just haven't recently had a chance to see either of them kind of do and grow more. So this is going to be a great opportunity for us to see how Robin reconnects with Saul and everything that she's going to get to learn, not only on the journey to Elbaf, but Robin will, through her research and reconnection with Saul, will have a grand closure to all of the tragedy that happened to her when she was a child. And our final kind of expectation that we hope to see in chapter 1067, if not very, very soon, is that we have the revelation about the connection of the leader of the revolutionaries, Monkey D. Dragon, and Vegapunk. And it does look like there is some kind of relationship, or at least rapport and respect between the two. In their conversation, it almost seemed like they both were acknowledging a similar goal in mind, but they were each taking their own approach to solving it. Now, we know that there's going to be a direct connection between Vegapunk and Dragon where it involves Kuma, but Kuma may not be the only connection, and there may be other Vegapunk projects or something that he's been working on that is going to directly benefit the revolutionaries. There may even be some way that Vegapunk has benefited Dragon himself to achieve his own goal, because as we saw, before Dragon had created the revolutionaries, Vegapunk hinted that Dragon had another goal. So the goal of taking down the world government may not be Dragon's main goal. The leader of the revolutionaries may have something much bigger in mind, and it may even be related to Luffy. But now that we've talked about our predictions, we'd love to know what you think about it. What are some of the things that you are most looking forward to in these next couple of chapters? Are you interested in what went on and why the Revolutionary Army came to be? What kind of knowledge Vegapunk might be willing to share about the Void Century and the Ancient Kingdom? Are you interested in what happened to Kuma and how Vegapunk's going to explain all of this to Bonnie? And finally, what do you wonder and what do you think the overall goal is? And how do you think Vegapunk and Dragon knew each other in the first place? There's so many great things that we're looking forward to, so let us know what you think about that and all the other things that you're wondering in the comments below. So as we wrap up our video, I want to thank you all so much for watching all the way to the very end. Be sure to comment on any themes or ideas that you'd like to see in future videos. And also, since you made it this far, give us a like and hit that red subscribe button before you head out to take on the rest of your day. I hope to see you all in our next video, and let's keep sailing this giant sea together. Take care.